Okay, so we are ready to talk about the trig ratios in terms of the unit circle. So we've talked about the trig ratios before. We talked about the fact that sine is y over r and cosine is x over r and tangent is y over x. And then the reciprocals, cosecant is r over y and secant is r over x, and cotangent is x over y. On the unit circle, r is always 1. So everywhere that we have an r, we're going to put a 1, because on the unit circle the radius is 1. So that's going to make the sine just y, and the cosine just x, and the cosecant 1 over y, and the secant 1 over x. Okay, so it's not going to change the tangent or cotangent, but the other ones get a little bit simpler because r will always be 1. So let's look at this in terms of our quadrantal angles. The sine of 180 degrees, right? Sine of 180. So we find 180. Sine is y. So the y coordinate is 0. So the sine of 180 is 0. The cosine of 180, is going to be x, and x is negative 1. So the cosine of 180 is negative 1. All right, now to do the others, we're going to have to do something with the coordinates. So when you look at the coordinates to figure out, say, cotangent of 270. Here's 270. Cotangent says to divide the x by the y. So we're going to divide 0 by negative 1. 0 divided by negative 1. That would be 0. Or the tangent of 90. The tangent of 90, here's 90. Tangent's y over x. So 1 over 0. And if 0 is on the bottom, that's undefined. Right. Cosecant of pi over 2. Pi over 2 is the same as 90, right? It's right here. Cosecant is the reciprocal of the y. So the y value up here is 1. So 1 over 1, the reciprocal of 1, 1 over 1, or just 1. And then the last one of these with the quadrantal angles, the secant of 2 pi. 2 pi is over here. Secant is 1 over the x coordinate. The x coordinate here is 1. So 1 over 1, or 1. All right. So these are going to be the new definitions of the trig ratios that we use when we talk about the unit circle, where we've changed the r in all of the ratios to 1. So we're going to figure out the values now for the other special angles in the first quadrant on the unit circle, the 30, 45, and 60. We've talked about the quadrantal angles, but now we're going to look at the other angles. So let's look at 45. All right, we're going to find the trig ratios for 45. So 45 degrees is here in the first quadrant. Right, here's 45. The x coordinate is square root of 2 over 2, and the y coordinate is square root of 2 over 2. Right, this is the x, this is the y. The sine is the y coordinate, so square root of 2 over 2. The cosine is the x coordinate, so square root of 2 over 2. The tangent is the y divided by the x. So in this case, because the y and the x are the same number, if I divide square root of 2 over 2 by square root of 2 over 2, that's just 1. All right, cosecant, we flip the sign, right? We do 1 over the sign, which means the reciprocal of the sign. So for cosecant, we're going to do 2 over the square root of 2. We're going to flip the sign. Or if you get rid of the square root on the bottom, 2 square root of 2 over 2, or just square root of 2. The secant would be the same thing, because the secant, you flip the cosine. And the cosine was the same as the sine, so when we flip it, we're going to get the same thing. And then for cotangent, we divide x by y, and once again, because those are the same number, we're just going to get 1. Okay, so those are the values for all 6 trig ratios for a 45-degree angle. Okay, so now we are going to look at our 30-degree angle. 30 degrees. So 30 degrees is also in the first quadrant. The x-coordinate is square root of 3 over 2. The y-coordinate is a half. Sine is the y-coordinate, so sine's a half. Cosine's the x-coordinate, so it's square root of 3 over 2. For the tangent, we divide the y by the x. Right, this is tangent. Tangent is y divided by x. So when we divide fractions, we keep it, change it, flip it. We keep the 1/2, change it to multiplication, flip the square root of 3 over 2. So we get 1 over the square root of 3. Or if you get rid of the square root in the bottom, square root of 3 over 3. Square root of 3 over 3. Cosecant. We flip the sign. So the sign was 1 over 2. Cosecant would be 2 over 1 or just 2. For the secant, right, for the secant, we're going to flip the cosine. The cosine was square root of 3 over 2. So we're going to do 2 over the square root of 3. Or if we get rid of the square root, 2 square root of 3 over 3. 2 square root of 3 over 3. And then for cotangent, you can flip the tangent, or you can divide the x by the y, however you want to look at it, right? Because it's going to give us the same thing either way. I'm going to divide the x by the y. So I'm going to divide square root of 3 over 2 by 1/2. So I'm going to keep it, change it, flip it. So I'm going to get square root of 3 over 1, or just square root of 3. Now the nice thing is going to be, now that we have those values, when we do the 60-degree angle, we're going to see a lot of the same values, because notice when you look over here at 60 degrees, it's the same two numbers for x and y, they're just switched. So when we combine them by dividing or taking the reciprocal, we're going to get a lot of the same numbers. So let's see. Sine is y. The y coordinate over here at 60 is square root of 3 over 2. Cosine is x. That's 1/2. For tangent, we divide the y by the x. So we divide square root of 3 over 2 by 1/2. That's what we just did here. And we got square root of 3. The reciprocal of square root of 3 over 2, remember we did that up here when we did the secant for 30. It's going to be the cosecant for 60, so 2 square root of 3 over 3. Secant, we take the reciprocal of the x, or the cosine, so we did that up here too. When we took the reciprocal of 1/2, we got 2. Reciprocal of 1/2, we got 2. And then for the cotangent, we would divide the x by the y, so square root of, or 1/2 by the square root of 3 over 2. Or you can look up here, it's going to be the reciprocal of tangent. So when we saw up here, square root of 3 over 3 and square root of 3 are reciprocals. So this is going to be square root of 3 over 3. I know I went through all that kind of fast. I'm trying to keep the video fairly short, but that gives you the basic values for those angles in the first quadrant. And you should have noticed with that last example that cofunctions have equal values when their angles are complementary. So for example, what you just saw, if you look back up at your notes, the sine of 60 and the cosine of 30 were equal because 60 and 30 are complementary. They add up to 90. So the cofunctions are sine and cosine, tangent and cotangent. That means like the tangent of 60 and the cotangent of 30 are the same. And secant and cosecant. That's where the word co comes from. These are the cofunctions. Okay, so the last thing just has you kind of summarize everything you just saw in a little table and then use it to find these values. So I'm just going to fill this out real quick. I'm going to pause the video and fill it out. You do the same, pause the video, and then turn it back on and see if you were able to figure out all of this information. All right, so check your answers here, see if you were able to get those. If you weren't, then come to class tomorrow prepared with some questions about those. And we're going to be going over these for the next, probably week or so. So you'll get the hang of it, but come prepared with questions over the things that you didn't understand tomorrow.